What's good? Welcome back to the Pop-Off Podcast, a conversation about Dune Part 2, Denis Villeneuve's follow-up to Dune Part 1, which was released in 2021. I'm Ralph Compiano. I am your host, and I'll be joined by a bunch of different guests from the Pop-Off Pod roster to talk about different angles of Dune. We're going to try to deep dive it as much as we can. Martian, you're the first one on here, and that actually makes sense. You know, this is an intergalactic story. We have the Martian on. I didn't even put those two together. What did you think of this movie? Just like from a very grand perspective, you got to see it either opening night or Friday night, whatever it was. You saw it opening weekend, $178 million at the box office opening weekend, which is honestly astounding. Really happy about that. But what were your initial thoughts on Dune Part 2?
I really liked it. My final Letterboxd score was a 4.5 to just kind of like put that in perspective. I was super excited going into it. I really liked the first one. I ended up seeing twice in theaters. The first time I liked it, but was kind of just like, what the fuck was that? And then I rewatched it and got a better understanding, which I think this one I also kind of need. Like, went into it, we're going to talk about scale and just like really appreciate the scale and how it picks up from part one, because it is a direct continuation. But just like how quickly they shift from the first one, from just kind of like setting the scene, building up all the politics and the religion and the Bene Gesserit and Paul, and like he's maybe going to fulfill this prophecy. What is he? And then this one, they just hit the ground running. They took like 30 minutes of build up to kind of get it going, and it was sillier in those first 30 minutes. I don't know if your theater was the same, but my theater was laughing the first half hour, especially at yeah, dude, like just a lot of like the Fremen lines, like. And I remember the first one's humorless. No comedy at all.
Sure. And
so that first half hour is like, where is this going? And then you just kind of get like lost in it, I would say.
Yes. It opens like very solemnly on this idea that Florence Pugh is who we open on. And Zendaya's, this is a spoiler podcast. If you have not seen Dune Part 2, don't listen to this. Come back to it once you've seen it, okay?
Get out of here.
But and honestly, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why haven't you seen it yet? I've seen it twice now. Like, you should have at least seen it once by now. But anyways, it opens with Florence, it closes with Zendaya. But you're right. Like, so were they laughing at like the Javier Bardem lines? Because he's getting absolute, like he's the big guy on Twitter right now. Like, I can't scroll my For You page on Twitter right now without seeing Bardem's face at least once every 3 tweets, and it's just like Stilgar just being like, damn, Timothy could, do like the old magic trick with his thumb where he like pulls it, makes his thumb look like it's not there, or that he can move it. And like Stilgar would be like, oh my God, Lisan Al-Gaib. And Ehren and I are going to cover that a little bit later on the pod, just kind of like the language, the Dune dictionary of everything. So if you don't understand it, we'll explain it a little bit later, at least as far as we know. But like, well, let me ask you this way. We open, and I think where I got an idea of like, I'm back in this world, I'm back in the Dune universe, I'm back in Villeneuve's hands, is the moment where the harvesters of the Harkonnen are in their spacesuits and they just start floating up. And it's like one of those moments in movies where you're like, I've never seen that before. Like, I've seen spacesuits, I've seen people jetpack, all this kind of stuff. They don't have flames bursting. It's almost silent. It's like just this slow levitation from point A to point B, and it's all practical. I think that's what Villeneuve is best at. That, and he gets the best costume designers in the world. Like, this entire movie looks like it was made by like the Fear of God Essentials guy, Jerry Lorenzo. Like, everything is like neutral colors, blacks, different shades of gray, which doesn't seem very practical considering they're on a desert planet with the sun just beaming on them constantly. But the Harkonnens are like, fuck it, we're emo, we're gonna go black to the brim. But like, are there any other moments that come to mind when you think of like that scale? Because that's like where I was like, all right, I'm back in Dune. Then I was kind of eagerly waiting, like, all right, well, when's our next battle sequence? And we don't really get one in the first like 25, 30 minutes. They're more like little fights more than battles. Like, fight, battle, war. And I think Dune does a really good job of balancing the three throughout the movie.
Yeah, and when you kind of like talk about like the floating and how it feels kind of like quiet and minimalized, like I also feel that in the fight scenes too, because they're not very loud. There's kind of like the weird like vibration of the shields, and there's not much like thuds, because it's mostly hand-to-hand combat or just kind of like some knives, but there's not like a lot of like thuds. It's mostly bloodless.
Yeah, no music
Like
either.
there will be scenes too where like, and maybe this I'm noticing from the first one, like Duncan Idaho's like going through guys with a knife, but there's like people bleed, like you can see, but it's just so bloodless, and they're just kind of like cutting through each other in a way, and it's just like, and if, for me, like the scale really comes when it's like, I deleted Twitter like a month ago, so I have no idea what like the discourse is around it. But I'm assuming that black and white scene where we get the introduction to Austin Butler has been kind of had a lot of conversation around it. And I know Austin Butler's had a lot of conversation around him too. And I'm not the biggest fan, but alas. In that scene, like when they pan out, I think what really always sticks out to me is when they do like a very wide shot, just kind of showing the whole landscape. Like especially when there's like 50 spaceships landing and you see just rows and rows and rows of people stretching back for God knows how long. And it doesn't seem like, it doesn't feel like you're necessarily watching like CGI images. Like you're just kind of like blown away by like the scale of it and how like impressive it is and how like properly sized things are. Cause you can still like, when they zoom out, like you can pick out like where Paul is. Sure. Or like where our main characters are, but you just see everything behind them. And then even like the Coliseum scene where you just see like it pan out and see how many people are in there. Cause it's kind of hard to gauge like how many people live on this fucking planet.
Yeah, or these planets.
And that's kind of addressed too at some point where they show like the outside of like the Capitol. Yep. And it's like, oh, okay, so there's cities here. There's people, there's like Harkonnen civilians that are going to this Coliseum, like,
and they're all bald and pale and like really ugly with black teeth and black eyes. I was actually curious about that. I'm like, all the Harkonnens are just have alopecia, like they just, and I wonder if it's because the sun, their black sun, is like burning the hair off of their head.
I mean, it has to be.
But I love that point.
And too, like the sandworms too. Like the sandworms are such a big fucking part of this movie. And the way that I've seen them described is like they're the size of airstrips. You see them just coming, and like even when their mouths open, you're just like, oh my god, this thing's fucking huge.
Enormous.
And when they're on the back, like they'll show like those wide shots of someone on a mountaintop just kind of watching somebody ride a worm, and you can just see how small they are on this massive, massive worm. And it just like, at no point does it feel like stupid. Where I'm watching this and I'm like, that looks fucking horrible. Like, what are they doing? Like, it always looks consistently good. And I know for years I've complained so much about just like CGI and green screen and bullshit, but it really does make a difference because you can tell when like they're filming in the desert. You know they're on sand, like they're on location, and it's just like everything feels plausible. And I think that's what's most impressive to me about Dune is I've never like. The only thing that ever really took me out of it was when Austin Butler would be like, they're hiding the spice. And just have like a black mouth and be like, all right, that was kind of fucking silly.
Okay, I want to stay on that actually because you don't like him. So like, what's your? Because I think the mass critical reception of him has been very positive. Like I was gonna do top 10 performances, kind of TikTok and IG reel. And I think he's going to fall in the top 3 for me somewhere. I thought he was magnificent. I think that his physicality is jarring, how good it is. I think the makeup and the hair, it all works beautifully. But what's your pushback with him? Is it the performance itself, like the actual language that he's using? Or is it you can't detach the fact that he had an Elvis voice for the last 2 years of his life on every single press tour?
I like his look. I like the look of the character. And I think it's cool. It's just like, there's something about him where I can't fully buy into it, and I think part of it might be just like some Elvis fallout. I think part of it might be like all the early reviews I was reading was like Austin Butler should get an Oscar nomination for this. Austin Butler is just the best part of this movie, and he's a central part to it, but he didn't have as big of a piece as I thought he would, and I understand how he falls into the whole kind of arc of Paul's journey, but from a performance, I think it might have been the voice. I feel like he's trying to do a little something too crazy with these voices because he just had a couple lines where he'd be like, I'd be like, all right, dude, like, you're kind of the only one hamming it up out here. And I get that you're like this crazy character, and Erica pointed out that she knows when they're talking about like his weaknesses that like him being horny is one of them.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's pretty silly.
But But I love
I
that
don't.
stuff because that's what he is. Like he's a 25-year-old man who's not just
Yeah.
horny, but he's also like a borderline cannibal. He is definitely like obviously there's a bunch of comparisons you can draw to the Third Reich, to the Harkonnen family. But I love the idea that they
Right.
built him up as this big bad and they don't introduce him until halfway through the movie. So we know
For
he's going to
sure.
be in it. We're anticipating him. And the reveal for him is this gladiator sequence that is, he's been through this 100 times in his life. Every time that he fights somebody, they're drugged up. And then one of the Atreides members, it was the doctor in part one who took care of Oscar Isaac and everybody in that family. He's not on drugs. And so he has this like shield around him that he can use when he's fighting these people. And then the moment that he clicks it off, I think is where I'm like, okay, yeah, because like it is in that moment where it's like that could be really corny if delivered by a guy who isn't as good of a performer as him. But instead, like for me, it was like, okay, he's a fucking psychopath. And I bought into it. And that's what we're supposed to buy him as when Leia Seydoux, who's in this movie for 2 or 3 scenes and fucks the shit out of him and gets his baby in her, is also Bene Gesserit. She says like, or Florence Pugh says it actually. She's like, he can't be the one that we're trying to like anoint. He's a psychopath. So they go and see him. So the hype's even realer. And then he lives up to it. And then there's the sequence where he goes and he talks to Baron Harkonnen, played by your favorite character in the movie, Stellan Skarsgård.
I love him, dude. He's the best part of the movie.
Just soaking in these mud baths, like, and he goes into him. He's like, "I should drown you right now." And then Baron says to him, he's like, "I have a better planet for you, or I have a better gift for you," and it's Arrakis. And he gives him Arrakis. And then from then on out, like, I'm actually interested in this as well. The first, like, I'd say hour, maybe a little bit north of that, it's not slow, but it is slower than I'd say like halfway through the second act into the third act, because that is like rapid. Like we are moving.
Yeah.
It's like, and I was curious what you thought of that. Like, because where does the 4.5 come from? Because I'm at 5 stars right now, and I'd say it's probably like a 4.8, 4.9 for me on a scale of 1 to 5. I don't think it's perfect, but like, what are your real issues with it?
I don't really think I have any issues with it. I think for me, like, a 5 is kind of tough for me to give out.
Sure.
And I think
I agree.
a lot of the times, like, I know when I'm watching a 5. Like, I just have the feeling. And I think kind of too with the Butler performance, I think I just need to see it again to really just like take it in and then like be like, okay, I already saw this. I'm going to be able to follow the story. So I just rewatched part 1. Like, I just watched it for the 3rd time and I loved it. And so I think this, I just need to like get back in there. I didn't get to see it in IMAX. Like, I need to have that like truly immersive experience. I don't know. I think I went in with such sky high expectations.
Do you like it more? Do you like it more than part 1?
I kind of.
Interesting. Okay, no, go ahead. Because I love part 1. I think it's brilliant. I've rewatched it several times in the last month just preparing for this. But I would lean towards this one.
I kind of have them like on par.
Interesting.
I think in terms of like enjoyment, because like 2 like is clearly like the scale, the performances, like the pacing. Like I really liked watching Paul like be fighting off like these images of like, oh my god, I don't want to be the Messiah. I don't want to be the Messiah. And then all of a sudden being like,
just having a bad trip.
Oh, that feels good. I'm going to take over the whole fucking world. Like that. What am I thinking? Like that's sick. But like part 1, like 2, I'm only like 130 pages into the book, but like I kind of want to finish the book and go watch it. Cause then I had just like such a better understanding of what was unfolding as I was rewatching part 1. Like I just kind of feel like these movies like need some context. It's kind of hard to go in blind, not knowing what's going to happen, because then it's just like there's 12 different characters and there's religion and politics and prophecies and messiahs, and it's just like I think it's kind of hard to get not necessarily like lost and confused, but just like I'm getting pulled in so many different directions. Just like where's this going to go? So to go in with a mindset of like, oh, I know where this is going, but now I can kind of pick apart like the smaller details and little nuances. Like I think I just need that. I can see it going to the 5. I think I just need one more go at it.
I think your point about all of the lore around it is, because I've been thinking about it, and when I've been pitching it to people, like people are like, "What is Dune? Why should I go see it?" Because there are a lot of people who like it's just not in their algorithms. Like I have colleagues who are not being advertised this movie, and I can't miss it.
Fair.
I had parents, and we were in Omaha for a basketball tournament this weekend, and they're like, they know I do movie reviews. They're like, "What's the best thing you've seen recently?" I'm talking about Dune, and they're like, "That old book." And I'm like, yeah, they made a movie about it, and they just don't. So like when I'm pitching it to them, I'm like, if you want to commit yourself to a new story and dive into the Bene Gesserit and the Lisan al Gaib and what a Muad'Dib is and all of these things, then it's there for you. Like he does such a good job of, he doesn't consider the viewer stupid by any means, but he will retrace his steps on some of the topics just so it's kind of like in your head. He's like, these are the ones that you need to remember. But you can also go into this movie, I think, and just appreciate it for the spectacle, for the levitation moments, for these moments where, like, I keep thinking about the raid sequence where Johnny, Zendaya's character, has the rocket launcher. And that's probably like in the first 45 minutes or so.
That shit was so sick.
And I think I took that scene for granted the first time that I watched it. And then I saw it again today, and I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like she literally rocket launched a helicopter, and that explosion is like something that you see in these bigger budget movies. But like that's their big load that they're blowing. Like that's the huge nut that they've been saving up, and he drops it on like,
and
the
this
first
just kind of
45
happens.
minutes. And it just looks better than anything else that you've seen. Like it is so realistic.
It's so much better,
monumentous.
And you don't. I think it's just like. I think it's really helpful too that this is a thing that was considered like unfilmable. It's impossible to be
the script
taken
can't
from
change.
The page to the screen.
Yeah,
and I think it helps that it's like made outside of these realms that we've gotten so used to, where it's like we have a 15-year plan for this franchise. There's going to be 5 to 6 sequels. Like part 2 wasn't even greenlit until part 1 came out.
Right. And it had to perform well. It was a gamble. And like leaving your movie off on that note where it's like there will be a part 2, that was not guaranteed at all. So he would have looked like a fucking fool if the end of his movie, Zendaya says this is just the beginning. Because it is just the beginning. And maybe they don't franchise it to 15 movies or something like that. But
I don't think they will. I think they'll only do the third and then be done. But
well,
it's
let me
interesting
ask you
too
because
because
this. They have a HBO Max is supposedly working on a series about the Bene Gesserit. 1, would you watch that? 2, does that frustrate you?
That frustrates me. I'm so sick of fucking
TV.
Like, I don't think we
movies
necessarily need like spin-offs. Like I guess I'm excited for the Penguin show.
Sure.
But that's
because it's Colin Farrell, right? Like you want to see Colin Farrell do weird shit.
I want to see him. I really like that performance.
Yeah.
And like I separate that stuff from like the grander DC stuff. And it is interesting that Dune is a Warner Brothers movie coming out of a studio that did for a decade plus try like this weird fucking connected universe. And a lot of actors inside of Dune have been a part of these major franchises that like Javier Bardem was going to be in the failure to launch franchise that ended up becoming the fucking Monsterverse.
Yeah.
Zendaya's all over the MCU. Oscar Isaac's in the MCU. Like, and it's just like, it's so different. Like, you could just tell, like, this wasn't churned out. This wasn't like, they're insane. And you hear the interviews talking about, like, I mean, yeah, we're filming in the desert. Like, it just gives you, like, a different immersion to it.
Atlanta. They're on location, and, like, I don't even know where they're at for most of these. I think they're, like, in Abu Dhabi, which is insane.
It's so helpful that it's isolated.
Yeah.
From, like, this major franchise that arches back 50, 60 years that has all these expectations on it. And you can just tell that there's a certain care that's put into it. And Denis already an incredible director. And he's a great world builder. And he's a great character builder. But you can just tell, like, the attention to detail, like you talked about, the costumes. You can tell that they're in a lot of physical sets. And the CGI isn't used as just, like, a cheap gimmick to push forward an action sequence. Like, you can tell that anything that's like CGI or it needs to be added because it doesn't exist in the physical world is just like meant to add and heighten the detail and like the world that we're in, and not just be like, oh, look, we're going to make this blow up because we can, and fucking 18 people had to work 120-hour weeks to get this done. Like, it looks better than anything that's come out, but you haven't heard anything about like, oh yeah, the FX people were overworked and there's all this crunch and we weren't sure. Like, Denis just like, yeah, I had to cut out a few scenes and it was really heartbreaking as a filmmaker.
Yeah,
like that's all you hear about the process. Like you don't hear anything negative. It's not like, yeah, it fucking sucked to make. Like this is going to be horrible. Like everyone who like works on it seems to like be like, yeah, this is an incredible project to be a part of. And like Zendaya said, she was like, put like the next one's ready for film. I'll start filming next week. Like, let's go. Like there's an excitement around it. And I think that kind of adds to it because it's just not like, oh, this is the fourth entry of this fucking slop fest and I had to watch 3 TV shows to get caught up on it. Like, because you go watch a Marvel movie now, it's like you're confused because you didn't watch the 8 shows that came out.
You didn't do the homework. Like, if there is homework associated with this, it's not going to be as fun. The only homework for this movie was part 1, and that's natural because it's a part of a trilogy, hopefully. I think they'll do a trilogy, quote unquote. I was thinking about it in this aspect of like, I want to talk the big twist before we go, and then I do have 2 things that you need to do. One, start thinking about it right now. You have to come up with your favorite performance, who your favorite actor was in the movie, and it can be Stellan if you want it to be, and then your favorite scene. So just keep those in the back of your mind. But I wanted to talk about this in the larger landscape of the greatest sequels ever, because I think that it is like the perfect identification of what a sequel should be now. When, like you just said, like the MCU, like technically they have like 32 sequels or whatever it might be. You know, you have The Godfather Part 2, which is a departure from the first one in a lot of ways. It's more about Michael and then Vito on 2 different timelines. You have The Empire Strikes Back, which this movie is gaining a lot of comparisons to, because I wanted to ask you about this twist. That is Luke, I'm Your Father. It's that episode in the Star Wars universe. And this one, we have almost 2 Luke, I'm Your Father moments. I'm not sure if either of them measure up to that scale. I don't think that they do. But finding out that Paul Atreides is a Harkonnen, or at least half Harkonnen, as a result of his mother, I was shocked.
That's pretty nuts.
Like, I had no idea. So like,
I turned Eric into
one of those. Yeah,
he's what? He's fucking what? Like,
because I'm not sure if it's the same degree as like Harry Potter finding out he's part Voldemort. But it is like, because we don't have that much of a relationship. Like, you know, you find out that Harry like has the Horcruxes inside of him after like 4 or 5 movies. We only have 2.5 hours of this. And we're like, you know, we understand that Paul hates the Harkonnens, that they've been battling each other for centuries. So there's that moment. And then there's also the moment that was maybe the most pimp shit I've seen in a movie in years, where he looks Christopher Walken dead in the face and he says, I'm going to take the hand of your daughter and we're going to rule over the world together. And she'll be really happy and she'll be taken care of. Because like, he's kind of like, he sees how hot she is and he like is like, yeah, fuck it, like I'm in on this. And
he's like 30 seconds after telling Zendaya, he's like, I will love you for as long as I breathe.
As long as I breathe.
Around, he's like,
psych. Yeah, she's not bad. Florence Pugh's a good looking woman.
I was trying to do a Walken impression during the movie and it was not getting good reception.
No, you want to drop it on here? This is a recorded thing. You can put it up for the people.
I was just trying to be like,
hey,
Christopher Walken in the sand in my pants.
Okay, that's not bad.
It hurts.
It could definitely be worse.
My ass itches.
Kiss your ring. You better.
The universe.
But yeah, between those 2 twists, like, did you need something like that in this movie for you to be like, yes, 4.5 out of 5 stars? Like, did they do anything for you, or do you think it's just like?
I think it added to it. I think it was a nice surprise, especially not like having known that going into it, not having finished the book going into it.
Sure.
It's always fun to have those twists. It's always fun to not know what the fuck's coming and just be like, oh, I don't think it's like at this same level as like Luke, I'm Your Father, just because of like how perfectly scripted like that whole scene and reveal is. But I like the twists. Like, I think it adds something to it, especially because like, what it made 178 worldwide. Like, I'd imagine that the book has picked up some popularity since the first one, but like everyone that I went to go see it with hasn't read it. Like, so I think for most people going to see the movie, going off of just part 1, I think that is like a nice surprise, but I don't think that necessarily like puts the movie over for me just because I didn't know that there was a twist coming. I had no idea.
Okay. Have you thought about your favorite performance and your favorite scene?
I think my favorite performance is always going to be Stellan. I just love that sloppy fucker, dude. And he's so like, and the thing about him too is that he is like so menacing,
Yes.
and
Girl with the
so
dragon
silly.
tattoo.
Like he's so
Yeah.
silly. Like he makes me giggle every time he pops up on screen, and he's just like
Floating.
But he is so menacing, and it is such a silly character.
Well, that
But
actually
like
goes
he's
back to
just
your
like
thing about the
he's so good
bloodiness.
because he's
Like,
so goofy.
I'm thinking about the moment where, you know, he gets his wires cut from like his flotation device, and then they like hit him in the back and like his battery spine, whatever the fuck is going on. He just drops
Yes.
to the ground, and he's obviously like completely handicapped, like probably like a quadriplegic. And then Timmy comes in, Paul comes in, and he looks up at the throne. Stellan does, or Baron Harkonnen does, and he's like trying to climb the stairs, but he just can't. And then Paul comes over with a dagger and says, "Grandfather," stabs him like right between his neck and his clavicle. And I love your point about the bloodiness, because now that I'm thinking about it, they bleed like they're in like a Roman painting. It's like something that belongs in like the Sistine Chapel blood, where it just like kind of like spills out, like it's like this weird.
It just like rolls out. It's a slow roll. It's like thick molasses.
Yeah. Yes,
because like sometimes people will be like stabbed and they'll be like, oh, and there'll be like blood on their hand, but it's not like you don't get stabbed. And it's just like, oh fuck. Yeah, he just like slowly bleeds out. I think, I do think that Timmy, when we were watching the first one, some people were watching it, like, I don't know. He's such a little puss. Like, he's just so scrawny. I'm like, that's the point though. By the time we get to the end of part 2, he's going to be this fully realized prophet. Like, and by the end of part 2, he's got that swagger to him. He's got like, you can tell he's got that cockiness. He's killed a few guys now. He's got literally the throne of the universe literally standing before him, and he just like, and especially watching part 1 and part 2 like pretty much back to back, like you can really see how he evolved from just like some naive, probably like, what is he supposed to be, like 17, 18-year-old kid, just like on some new planet, and he's kind of weird, and then by the end he's just like, he's got that swag to him. I like Bardem a lot. Josh Brolin's always great.
Well, what's your favorite scene? Do you have a favorite scene that's coming to mind?
Favorite scene? I love that raid when Zendaya has the RPG. It's so hard to pick one. I love all the sandworm stuff. The final battle was sick just because, and like just the final scene in that room, where Paul does become basically the head of the universe and just unleashes an entire space-wide global war, because just kind of like, I don't know, just puts a cap on everything so well. Like it just like finalizes his evolution so well in the way that they ended on kind of a cliffhanger again, and you just like see him looking over space. I think that the end got me excited for like what to come, and it got me excited to finish the first book so I can get on to the second, because I want to know what I'm assuming he's a global terrorist. I don't want to know.
Don't say anything. No. I don't want any assumptions. I don't want nothing, because I want the story to be raw.
I'm on page 140 of the first book. I have no fucking clue.
Yeah,
but just based on everything, you can just see like, you can see him get that flash of just like,
he's a totally different.
Doing this
he's
for
a totally
so
different
good
person. Like a totally different person after he drinks the water of life. And the same thing happens to Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica to a degree, but she still seems like she's in control. But there are moments where Paul doesn't seem like he's even, I don't know, like a totally different like humanity to him than if you go back to part 1, even like when he's having breakfast with his mom and she tells him to use the voice. Like now he's in complete control of all of his powers. And he's just, you know, he's LeBron. Like he's just got like the blue eyes, and he's steering this army. And now he has an even larger army, because I believe he gets the Emperor since he kissed the ring. And it's just, it's going to be fucking intense. I'm ready for the Holy War. But all right, we need to move into our next conversation. So Martian, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. And we'll hear from you soon. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit broader about the movie, and we're going to go into the performances a little bit more. So I'm now joined by Skyler Riesberg, Peter Compiano, and Ehren Fox. And I've tasked them with the same thing that I tasked Martin with, which is their favorite performance and their favorite scene. So let's actually just start on that note. I ask you guys to keep this in mind. This is a big movie with a lot of huge A-list actors, so I'm sure it's like kind of difficult to pick your favorite performances. I'm trying to rank them 1 through 10 for like a reel or a TikTok, and I'm really struggling with it. but my number one has been pretty easy. But I'm curious what your guys's are. So, Ehren, we'll start with you. This is a story that you've been familiar with for. When did you originally read the book? Was this like when we were in middle school together? Was this like a high school project? What was your first experience with Herbert?
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly, but it was probably seventh, eighth grade ish when I first read Dune, and I only ever read the first one. And then I reread 1, 2, and 3 when I was probably 20, maybe. Yeah.
So you've been imagining these characters in your head, right? Thinking about them for a long time, trying to figure out. And when I read a book, I don't know about you guys, but like I picture actors, and like I'll pick like whoever it is to be like my protagonist, my antagonist, etc. I bet you did the same thing when you're reading these. But who was your favorite performance from Dune Part 2?
So my favorite performance, and I want to asterisk or give a caveat where I'm calling Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, and Timmy Chalamet off limits because
Sure.
they were great. I think specifically Lady Jessica and Paul Atreides were excellently cast and excellently acted. My Steeler performance was Austin Butler as FAIRWTHR.
I'm glad we're starting with him. This is Petey's favorite character of all time.
Dude, he was
of all time.
He's up there, dude. He's Aaron, go ahead. I fucking love that dude.
I thought so. Obviously, like Ralph said, I've had a character in mind in my head. I've had this picture of who this character is, and I don't think there are many times when you read a story and then you see a film or a TV show or anything that you're like, this character is even what I had set my head up to be. But in this instance, it's actually better. Austin Butler's FAIRWTHR is better than I ever imagined it. I thought it was just fucking awesome. I love the little mannerisms where he's fucking growling at people and like, like just the animal energy combined with the like weird, like clear, defined tactfulness of how like it's this juxtaposition of like totally out of control with like Bene Gesserit fully in control. And I thought he captured it amazingly in every scene he was in. I thought second half of the movie, he stole the show for me.
When I found out that he was initially cast as a Harkonnen, I was like, huh. Because my experience with Harkonnens had been Bautista and Stellan Skarsgård. Like these big, I mean, almost just like, not like Stellan's like obese as Baron Harkonnen, and then Bautista is like a fucking former WWE wrestler, so he looks like a defensive end. And then when they cast Butler, I was like, the physicality is just so different. It seems like he's like the most evolved version of that. So I was curious, like, was he going to be able to pull that evil off? Because I had associated their evil with brute force, like just the idea of like Bautista early in the film, one of his like commanders like responds to him when they're in their little lair and they're planning, and he takes his head and he just starts pounding it against that table, right? Like as like that's like his Vader moment. And then Butler does something similar, except instead of like using brute force, he uses quickness and precision, and he slits his fucking throat with his blade. And like that blade, I think, is like so. Like the thing I love about this series so much is that when it comes down to like a one-on-one fight, it's not John Wick. They're not using guns. It's hand-to-hand combat with like a blade, and that just feels like ritualistic and beautiful. But Petey, what's your favorite part about Butler? Is this your favorite performance as well? Like, is this the one that you're like, because he doesn't come in until 100 minutes into the movie essentially, and then he kind of steals the show on the back half. I think you put that really well, Ehren, in the chat, where it's like it doesn't become his movie because Timmy is still obviously changing and he is a dynamic character, but he just brings a different energy to it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that he was absolutely spectacular. Like, just everything that he was doing in this movie was just phenomenal. Like, I think a lot of it too was the buildup of him. Like, oh God, like FAIRWTHR, like you don't want to, that's someone you don't want to mess with. I forgot who mentioned him, but somebody had mentioned him.
She was like, because the Bene Gesserit, the Reverend Mother of like the Bene Gesserit, all of them, like the Charlotte Rampling's character, she said, yeah, he's like our backup plan. Like we might have him as like the one if we want him to be. And she goes, oh, he's a psychopath. And then that's when they cut over to the gladiator scene.
Yeah, I mean, there was just like every time this dude would come on the screen, I would just get so excited because I knew I knew something absolutely psychotic was going to happen. I mean, the first scene we saw him, he had his little gimps, and he's like, "Oh, like, what do you want to eat today? Like, are you feeling organs? Are you feeling toes? Like, what do you want?" And then he's just standing there. He's just standing there with a knife. Then he fucking slits one of his own girls' throats. And I'm like, what is going on? This right here is perfection of portraying a psychopath. Like, this dude is the definition of an absolute psychopath. And when he's like talking with Stellan Skarsgård's character, he gave him that kiss, and I didn't know that. I was like doing some research, and I guess that was just improv.
Yeah.
He just like kissed him.
Well, Stellan kissed him, and that was supposed to happen. But then Butler just brings it right back in. He's like, "You thought you could kiss me? I'm going to kiss you twice as hard." And I've been watching a lot of Austin Butler interviews, just like a lot of like Dune press stuff. He leans bisexual, I think. Like the way that he looks at Timothée Chalamet when they're doing like these 2-on-1 conversations, he looks at him with such intent. And that could be like a marketing strategy that like his like agent is like, "Hey, like when you're in a conversation with these people, like when they're talking, like, you know, really pay attention to them." But it seems sincere. It seems like he like really like loves his castmates and stuff. But I think like to your point about that sequence when we're introduced to him, he's picking between the two blades and like it's his birthday, right? So this is a big day for him. Like, how do you guys celebrate your birthday? I usually get drunk with my friends. And he's like has this gimp. I love that word, P, because it's perfect. And it's a lard ass. It's a really fat dude. And he's wearing the weirdest outfit. He has like a leather like top, and then you can see his tits. It's like they're like embarrassing him like for how fat he is. And he has to come to him in his chamber. And he has the 3, I think he calls them his pets, over on the side. And then he has like all of these maids, and he slits one of the maids' throats, and he's like, "You can feed it to my pets now." And then right after that, that's when we go into the gladiator scene. And Berg, I wanted to talk to you about this. So he has 3 enemies that he has to fight. It's supposedly the last 3 people of House Atreides, right? That's how they're marketing it to their huge crowd. How did this scene play for you? Because this is where we get, I think this is a big swing in movies. This could have gone terribly if they would have filmed it wrong. But the black and white is almost like a neon black and white. Did this work for you? And was this a point in the movie where you're like, fuck, like I've never seen some shit like this before?
I was already locked in on that movie, I think, from the opening scene. So this was just me strapping on even harder to the roller coaster. Immediately had the same reaction though, where I thought that, dude, this is so Gladiator. Like they're redoing a Gladiator kind of style here, and you can hate that, or that because it's hard to pull off. Like when you're trying to imitate something where it's as high up as Gladiator is in movie rankings in cinema, that can be tough to do. But I just think the whole premise, him fighting the last 3 Atreides, it was a good show. And then you find out that one of them wasn't drugged, and you're like, oh shit. Okay, is he going to beat him? Like, how good of a fighter is this guy? We haven't really seen him hand-to-hand combat anybody.
He was the doctor in part 1, right, Ehren? Like the one who's like Oscar Isaac's like right-hand man.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy, but also Austin Butler.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then but when you're talking about the black and white too, with I don't know, kind of an ultra ray, I didn't know that it was in black and white. You know, I might have been a little on some. That doesn't even matter. I was watching the movie, and I had no idea it was in black and white. I was just like, oh, this is kind of weird. And then somebody I was watching the movie turned next to me, like pointed out, hey, this is black and white. And I'm like, I don't think it is. Like, no. Started watching a few seconds longer, realized it totally is. I was blown away because it's not fully black and white. So everything you're seeing, there's like, it's just trippy to watch because there's a hint of color going on in there, but then it's also overall black and white. Everybody's super pale. But no, to your point, I love that scene. And I think I don't know if they could have done a better job with it. Just the tension there between the father, the son, him just looking down. Like, you know, they're so far away, and in real life, like, you're not having that moment. But the way they build it up in the movie is just like, is he going to let his son die? Is his son going to earn it? There's so many questions. The tension's so there. So I was fully locked in. I thought they killed it.
And correct me if I'm wrong here. Is it his son or is it his nephew, right?
Oh, is his nephew?
It's his
His nephew.
He's
his brother.
So,
Yep.
Oh, so Dave is not his son either?
No.
No, it's
Oh,
his nephew.
shit.
You're referring to him as Dave.
Yeah, he'll be Dave.
Yeah, Dave
We can call him
Bautista.
Beast too.
Ramen or whatever the fuck his name.
Beast
Okay, good to know.
And then there's another element to it too, where the Bene Gesserit are in, the chamber up top, and they're watching, and Leia Seydoux is like, "All right, this is gonna be my baby daddy." Like, that's really what it is about. Like, she's almost on a recruiting visit. It's like, Calipari bringing in Dillingham for the first time. He's like, "Is this guy cut from the same cloth as me? Does he belong at Kentucky?" And she's like watching him, and I thought, like, I love Leia Seydoux. But it was hard for me to gauge like what her motivation, like if she had exterior motivations from the Bene Gesserit Ehren, because Charlotte Rampling's character, the Reverend Mother, sent her on this mission, right? And the reason that Rampling didn't go on the mission herself is because she's a motherly figure. And we learned that FAIRWTHR killed his own mom, which is just another level to the demonic like nature of him. And so she's guiding him down. And that's one of my favorite scenes of the movie. The slow motion camera that they use when they're going into her room. And then you just see the box right there, and you're like, "Oh fuck!" And then she puts the needle to his neck, and then the next thing you know, she's talking to the Reverend Mother, and she's holding her stomach. She's like, "The mission is done. I got his seed in me."
Yep. So the reason there's a few reasons there. First of all, the Bene Gesserit, basically any plan that they have has been 300 to 600 years in the making.
Right.
So the reason, like you said earlier, FAIRWTHR is kind of their backup plan. They needed to secure the biological specimen.
Yep.
And Bene Gesserit in the story, like Bene Gesserit have full control over like conception too. So like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, oh, maybe I'll get pregnant or not. No, like she, as soon as they have sex, inseminate, whatever, like. There's bodily control over
boy or girl,
boy or girl, making sure it's germinated, all that. But the most interesting thing to me, so in the book, there's kind of like two characters that in the movie FAIRWTHR is bridged. So the lady that Lady Count Fenring or whatever her name is in the movie, who gets pregnant by him, in the movie or in the book. Is basically FAIRWTHR's character for the most part. Like the juxtaposition of Paul Atreides, Bene Gesserit, Kwisatz Haderach opportunity is this Count Fenring guy.
Okay.
But then they kind of it would have gotten overly expositionary, kind of explaining all that, so they bridged the two, and so that's why you see FAIRWTHR taking the Gom Jabbar, right before they're going to inseminate or have sex, whatever. But it's really interesting because the Bene Gesserit never planned for the Kwisatz Haderach to happen then. It was supposed to be one generation later. It was supposed to be Jessica was supposed to have a girl, and then FAIRWTHR and the Atreides girl were supposed to produce the Kwisatz Haderach.
Okay, so this is perfect because I want to go into her. All right, so there is a lot of this movie, and I even tracked even more of it the second time watching it. We spent a lot of time in Lady Jessica's belly talking to an embryo, and that is a very crucial part of it. And once again, huge swing. The way that he visualizes that, especially when she drinks the water of life and the blue is coming in. That is just amazing to me. All right. So did you guys know that, did I spoil it for you? Cause I think I might've texted it in the group chat. I was like, it turns out Anya Taylor-Joy is going to be in this movie. Were you guys surprised to find out that it was her when watching the movie? Because I was like, damn, it would have been really, really fucking cool if they could have kept this a secret until like opening night. And it's just like, hey, like he has a vision. And it's I Love You, Paul, and it's Anya Taylor-Joy. But I do want to talk about Lady Jessica because she is. So I've been thinking about her and Timmy as mother and son, right? And when I watched part one again, I looked at her and Oscar Isaac, and I was like, it actually kind of makes sense that Timothée Chalamet would be their son. I think if those two had a kid, it might kind of look like Timothée Chalamet. Okay. And she seems like so motherly in part one. And then she drinks the water of life in part two. The first time I watched it, I'm not going to lie, I struggled a little bit when I saw the face tats. It's like somebody drinks lean for the first time, wants to become a SoundCloud rapper. Now they have face tats all of a sudden. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is my Rebecca Ferguson. She's so weird all of a sudden. Pete, did you have any pushback on that? You're like, this is kind of stupid. I don't really like this part of it. Or are you like, it makes sense. She drank the drink. Now she's like, got all this pain and sorrow in her system.
Oh no, I loved it, dude. I loved
You're all
it,
in?
especially because I love the face tats because the old Reverend Mother, she had face tats,
Yep.
and we saw her go away. So I mean, when we see that first scene with Jessica and the face tats, dude, I was like, oh shit, this girl's trying to leave. Like, it's like when fucking Anakin goes bad, like she's full business now, right? Because then when her and Timmy are talking, it's like, oh, Timmy wants to stay back and do this, and Lady Jessica's like no. Like, you need to do this. And I'm just like, damn, this bitch means fucking business, dude.
Yeah.
She's not playing no fucking games. She's like, I know what's up. She's like, I literally made this prophecy. Like, this is it. This is what you need to do. And then she was like, yeah, the baby literally said, you're being blinded by love. Basically said the baby's calling you a broke-ass bitch. So I loved her, dude. I love those face tats. I'm so excited to see this movie again. I'm so excited. I'm like a little boy.
And on those face tats, I wonder. So I just kind of noticed when the original person she took that power from, where she became the new one, that girl had way less face tats.
Yeah.
And then Lady Jessica had a ton all over her face. They were everywhere. Significant amount more.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wondered if that meant anything. Like if there was a little something behind that. If it's like, are you more powerful? Is that what that's signifying here? Or
that's why we have
are we
Ehren
just
on.
going for a harder look? You know, I don't know.
I don't know that it's spoken to in the books specifically because I definitely don't remember that. But I had the same thought, Berg. And my assumption is that basically Lady Jessica is a more established, like more learned Bene Gesserit. You know, she knows it. And we knew that well before, you know, like the Reverend Mother and her are pretty tight. She learned from like the head Reverend Mother. She's basically the Anakin to the Obi-Wan of the Bene Gesserit clan, but flip-flop, like good, bad version there.
Some Palpatine too, though.
Some Palpatine too. No, I think it's just she's basically the shit. It's basically your scout badges basically on your face.
Okay, so we should actually talk about the twist too, because Martin and I talked about how this has a some Empire Strikes Back. It's drawing a lot of comparisons to that because that's the Luke, I Am Your Father episode. We learned that Lady Jessica is the daughter of Baron Harkonnen, Stellan Skarsgård's character. Any pushback on that? Was that like, because I think that's supposed to be in this universe, that's supposed to be the twist, right? As far as like the moment where you're like, oh shit, it's either that in this movie or it's him choosing Florence Pugh over Zendaya. Correct me if I'm wrong though.
Okay, wait, real quick, what I will say about that is they dropped that bomb, but they didn't drop it like a bomb. They just they just put that in and then they just moved on. Like people were asking questions around the theater. I could hear like, what the fuck just happened? Was that a big scene?
It's not a bomb. It's not a bomb. Like if you're an audience member, the reason for that detail is just to tell you as the reader, as the audience, that the Bene Gesserit have plans. It's like to re-emphasize that point where like nothing happens that isn't somewhat influenced or controlled by these people.
Yep.
It's strictly just to say like, oh wow, the two biggest families are going to produce the Kwisatz Haderach. Like this has been hundreds of years in the making. This should be no surprise to you, but I just want to remind you that this is the type of shit that they think of and foresee. Remember
years in advance,
who's really running the show. You know, and that's why Paul Atreides is the one that they're trying to, you know, that's why FAIRWTHR is a backup plan, because if they lose control of this, and who knows where this goes.
Okay, so this is all led from us saying that our favorite performance is FAIRWTHR, so that's great. Or at least Aaron's. Pete, did you have the same favorite performance? Was yours also FAIRWTHR?
Yeah, easily. I absolutely love Austin Butler in that role. I mean, every single, I'm gonna say it again, every single scene he was in, I was completely in on it. The ending scene when he... Yeah, go ahead, Berg. We need to hear yours, Berg.
I want to know who your favorite performance was.
Yeah, I mean, Ehren kind of did the caveat here, so we're not going to go with like the top four we've talked about or the top four that we know were good performances. I got to give love to this little man, though, who provided some comedic relief for me throughout the movie where I didn't think this was going to be a comedy at all. I got to go with the Apostle Stilgar. I believe his name was? Yeah, Stilgar. Yep. Javier Bardem. He was so funny. His little moments of, well, at the beginning it was comedic, and then it did change a little when it got a little more serious, kind of followed that tone. But at the beginning, where everything Paul Atreides did was, like as was written, or like the Messiah would not tell us he's the Messiah. It was absolutely hilarious because you're like, who is this freaking fanatic freak over here who is definitely well respected, but is also kind of like, we respect you because of the old religion, but you also cry wolf about this all the time. So chill out, man. So I thought he was brilliant performance, and he just cracked me up in a movie I didn't think had any comedic relief.
Martian and I touched on it a little bit, but like he deleted Twitter a month ago. Martian did. I've been on it very much so. I usually am on it the most after a movie like this because I want to see Twitter's reaction to it. I cannot scroll my timeline without seeing Stilgar's face one in every 3 posts. It's always just like some kind of meme, like like Timothy Chalamet like reads like a Laffy Taffy joke to him, and he looks at him like as it was written, and it's just like the most amazing thing he's ever witnessed. But there is one scene, and P, you would love this, where they're spoiled by how great of a cast that they have. There's one minute scene where Josh Brolin is reintroduced to the story, and he is showing Paul, Chani, and Stilgar where the Atreides atom bombs are, like that cave. And you just have Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, and Timothy Chalamet on a rock looking at a place. That's the 2 biggest movie stars in the world right now that are our age, like this generation's new Leo and Winslet. And then you have the 2 guys who are No Country for Old Men together. Like you have, what are the fucking names? Anton Chigurh and Llewellyn. Like you have those 2, and it's just like a spoil of riches. I'm sorry, Pete, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, to touch on Riesberg's point with how Stilgar was so funny. The reason he was so funny is because we saw him as this badass, stoic, intense figure to get into the Fremen. You need to kill this guy, and you got to do all this, and I'm gonna train you. And then he turns the leaf, and he's like, "Oh, this is the Messiah," and it was just so funny seeing him turn into a big softie. But on your point with Josh Brolin and Bardem and Zendaya and Timmy rolling up on the atom bombs, I would say that would be my one picking it of this movie. It's just like, oh fuck, Josh Brolin's alive, your old trainer and warrior, and oh, guess what? We got fucking atom bombs, dude. We got like 92 of them. Like that's my one picking it of the movie. Where like, all right, that's a little too convenient for these fucking poor Fremen people. Like, oh, now we got. I mean, okay,
but it's the Atreides.
I'm not going to disrespect
atom bombs.
I know that, but it's like out of nowhere, your old trainer just shows up, and it's like, oh, guess what? We got 92 atom bombs. Like, I don't. Give me a break, dude.
Him being alive is a little bit of give me a break, but yeah, I believe that Oscar Isaac would bring the atom bombs and hide them somewhere. But him being alive, it was like, and like Timmy. I know he said, I recognize your footsteps. That's amazing that Paul Atreides can do that. But like he
to the first movie.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty nice. But like he never like just like stops before he's about to kill somebody. And he did in that moment. Maybe it's because of the footsteps. Hopefully it is. But I love Stilgar because he is like he's so stoic in the first one, where he is this leader. Like the first time that we meet him is with Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, and all of them in that little chamber. And he spits on the ground, and it's like a sign of like respect, like he's like giving them his water. And I think the even more interesting thing is that this feels like such a modern movie because you have the older people who are really religious and spiritual, and they believe in like these stories and this. They have hope, they have faith, right? But then the younger generation, the Zendayas and her friend, are like, that's all bullshit. And like just that like dichotomy between the two of those things is just hilarious because it's like, I mean, that's like the most apt thing I think for like our modern times, where it's like our mom is like super religious, she loves God more than anything, and it's like, younger people struggle with that. And even when it's like right in front of Zendaya's face, she's still struggling to believe in it because she's like, the Bene Gesserit came up with this story, this is something that they wrote.
Agreed. Are we gonna go on favorite scenes?
Yes, we definitely can. Okay, so I'm curious if you guys have the same favorite scene, Petey and Riesberg. Riesberg, go ahead.
We've got it.
It's one of the two.
One of the two.
It's one of the two.
Yeah, I think we have our 2 top favorite scenes.
Okay, one of the 2. Because I don't know what the 2 are. Because there are some scenes that like I think were like a little bit more minute that are like amazing. So I imagine it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the gladiator scene that we had under the black sun, and then the scene where Is it the actual battle between FAIRWTHR and Paul Atreides, where he looks at the Bene Gesserit and says silence, and is one-on-one with Christopher Walken, or not one-on-one, but they have the entire community at this chamber, and it's the climax of the movie. Is that the other one?
That's not
That
my
was
other
one of the two.
That was one of your two, Bert.
Oh,
All right, then what's your other one, P?
Okay, they were different.
We'll do each of them.
Start with Berg then.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Bert.
Okay. Yeah, so that scene when they fight, I mean, that's just they did great battle scenes in this, and I think that's something really hard to do. And I haven't seen that great a battle scene since I was literally thinking about this after I had to call back to Lord of the Rings, where it's like that's the last time I saw something on this level that made me feel something. But their sword fight at the end between Paul and Austin Butler, FAIRWTHR, so fast. I couldn't believe how fast they were actually going.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminded me of some of the lightsaber scenes from Star Wars where they're like,
Revenge of the Sith.
these guys train so much. They were like, you guys got to slow down. Like, we can't. They ended up actually just slowing it down on camera because they were going so fast. They couldn't get them to stop. They trained so much. So that's what it reminded me of. And if that's what they're doing, that just is probably testament to how much work they put into the movie. But that aside, it was just badass as fuck to see. And
well,
then
it
the
stops
second
halfway
one,
through. I mean, like the battle, like they're battling. He kicks Timmy to the ground, and Timmy looks like he's not going to get up. And then Timmy's looking over at Zendaya, and FAIRWTHR turns around and goes, "Is that your pet?" And it's just like, oh shit!
God.
Like this motherfucker
dude,
is nuts. He's like, any special attention for the pet?
Not every girl's a fucking pet, you maniac. You can't
Not
just
every
do
girl
whatever
is
you want.
in flesh either.
Yeah.
they had to put it in there though, because it sounds like he was losing the fight. They had to give him that edge of like, are you going to do this for your girl? Or are you going to make her a pet? Are you going to let her be a pet? He's not going to let her be a pet. My second favorite scene was just when Paul Atreides completely put on a different mask, Faceless Men style, and decided he was the chosen one, and then came out there, gave that huge speech where you're like, oh, he's kind of like challenging every single one of them to fight right now. That's kind of fucked. But then
Lady Jessica's like slow down. Yeah.
Swords were pulled and touched. I was like, oh, you lose this 100 out of 100 times, my man. But he just got in their head, used what they knew against them, and was like, I am the leader, and lived up to it. I thought that was so sick. I was like moving in my seat.
So little caveat to your, I agree that was an amazing scene, but Paul knows. That's like one of my biggest issues with the film is that they don't impress upon the audience enough that this guy has the past and present in his head. Like he can see, so like that's why he won them over in that scene. He goes, yep. I know what your grandmother prayed to when she was dying. I know what you are praying to right now.
Where your nightmares are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know you better than you. Yeah. And then that's when they all like freak out and like he wins them over and they're like, all right, fuck it. This is the one. This is our guy. I actually wanted to talk about that too, because, Bene Gesserit is a strictly female religion idea. Like the only females can be it. And he is the one male that can do that. And he also has the politicking side of things. So that's why he is so powerful. So that being your favorite part of the performance, because that's like the performance that people on Twitter are saying, like, this is the one that should win him his little gold statue. Like he should get an Oscar for that. And I've like, when I'm watching these movies, like I think Timmy's brilliant in it. And I do this exercise in my head where I'm like, is there anybody else that could do this? And I think like the one person that most people would associate with like this level of spectacle in movies, I don't think he would be good at it at all. And I think it's a credit to why Timmy is so good. Exactly, Aaron. Tom Holland. Like I don't think Tom Holland could pull this off. Like I just don't. Like Pattinson's a little bit too old to do it. I think Butler might have been able to do it. But I think that Timmy's just he does the sad moments so well in this movie, like where he's laying down with Zendaya after they've had sex and he's shirtless and he's bulked up a little bit. Like he's gotten a little bit more chiseled. Like he used to just be like skin and bones. I think he's got a little bit of muscle mass. He looks really good in those suits. I think that this year for Halloween, we should all get together and wear those suits because I think they're fucking sick. Like, it's very like opium. Like I could see these outfits like in Playboy Cardi music videos. Like they really, everything looks like it's sponsored by Fear of God. Like the essentials, like people are like wearing like that, like neutral colors. I talked about that with Martian too, but I'm trying to think of like I don't know what my favorite performance is, but I think we've already mentioned Timmy. And if we can't do those four and then you just mentioned Stilgar.
Mm-hmm.
You know who I really
you
missed?
gotta go. Okay.
Who? Batista?
I was
I'm
gonna,
not
you gotta say Batista.
I'm not doing Batista.
He's so. I love his performance of showing shame. He was just always just like, oh,
He was.
oh.
He was.
He knew he was fucking up, letting everyone down, and I just thought he portrayed shame so well.
Yeah.
He did
I will
great
say,
for the character.
Yeah.
I still feel like we're missing like the most badass, sickest fucking scene in the movie. And
Are
you
we
guys,
still scenes?
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of flipping back and forth between scenes and
Performance
performances
scenes.
because we're all just so excited because this movie was just
They're
so
hitting
good.
So fucking good. What's the most
Yeah.
bad? All right, it would be the final one. I just think it's just the moment where he says silence to the Bene Gesserit and she goes abomination. I was like shaking in my seat when that happened. But I think that the raid sequence when Zendaya has the rocket launcher, that's where I kind of like stood up in my seat a little bit more. I was like, oh fuck, because she literally rocket launches a dude. And like, I've just never seen that in a movie. And then he has to break the shield and he sacrifices himself sprinting across the sand. And we've just seen a bunch of motherfuckers get picked off like ants by that sprayer. And he's like willing to sacrifice himself, leaps in front of the moving leg. And then boom, she rocket launches him. The other thing about this movie though is that like, I love the vehicles in it so much and all of like the actual like material design. It all seems like insects. That's why I love part one so much. Like it stood out to me, like you saw like the helicopter blades moving and they're moving like wings on like a bat. And then you see like the orthopter, just the coolest fucking thing. Or like the magnets, like when they're like the magnet bombs that are going towards things. It's just like those inventions that most movies just don't even bother with. Like that's what Denis Villeneuve spends so much time thinking about that are so badass. But the rocket launcher itself, it's like, it's not like an RPG. It's almost like a shoulder thing. It looks like a camera, and it just goes. And that's just, it's just such a fucking good movie, man. Like I'm almost at a loss for words at it for sometimes because it's just there's so much in it, and I think that's probably my second favorite scene. I also do love the water of life scene with Timmy though, and just like that. Can we talk about the midget? She is the worm tamer that Lady Jessica goes to. That's another thing where it's like, how the fuck do they think of this? Like she does that like that little ritual and that dance with the worm, and then she drowns it in the water. And I'm constantly amazed by those little things in these films where, I watched all the Marvel movies and none of them have half the invention of casting a little person to do that role. And she like has like bowed legs and she's like really stocky. And she's just like where the fuck did they find that person? Like, I don't know where you find people like that for these movies.
I gotta be honest, I don't think I noticed that.
You don't notice it at first when she's talking to Lady Jessica, but then there's a shot where she's standing next to Timmy and she's like, her head's like up to his waist, and Timmy's like 5'9", maybe.
I'll have to for that next time I watch it.
Yep. So there's a little Easter egg, I guess.
There were so many crazy small, minute details like that. It's almost like Denis Villeneuve was literally put here on this earth just to make this fucking movie. Like he's that good at it. Like I was watching the behind the scenes productions and everything, and just like the details that go into these Arrakis and everything. Like, dude was unbelievable.
Well, every movie that he's made, I think you can see some of it in this. Maybe not Prisoners, but definitely Sicario, and definitely Arrival, and Enemy even. Like that sequence we just talked about with Zendaya with the rocket launcher. That's straight from Sicario. The Arrival aspect would be like those magnets, like. Even just like Martian and I were talking about these shots of where you have like an entire army and you can see every single one of them, or in the gladiator sequence, you see the crowd, and that's CGI, but you can hardly notice. It's just like a bunch of people going fucking rampant. Like it looks real, and it almost like puts other movies to shame to a degree. It's like, why can't you motherfuckers figure this out when you're probably working with twice the budget that he is? Like he's a big director, and this is a big movie, but it's not going to, I don't think it had the same budget as like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania or something like that.
It was 190 million. That's what they got for this movie.
Okay, so Marvel movies will usually get about 250. So they work in like $60 million more than him.
Yeah.
Well, to speak to that first scene where they cut the Gidi Prime and the gladiator scene, I think for me, like that was the there were a handful of moments in the movie that took my breath away. But like, you're watching this movie on like this kind of focused lens up until that point, other than the attack on the spice miner.
Sure.
And then we hit Gidi Prime, and then all of a sudden it's like this, and you're just like, what the fuck, dude?
Mhm.
Holy shit. Like, it was magnificent. And we talked about it a little bit before the pod, just depicting the kind of noir black and white of the Harkonnen home planet and how it all worked out just was, I thought, incredible looking and really kind of breathtaking.
Well, also imagination inspiring, because I came out of this movie, especially the second time, we're going to a holy war against the other great houses. I haven't looked into any of the other great houses at all, but I'm imagining each one of those worlds, if we go to them, like, I want to know what's going on out there. I want to see what those worlds look like, because I know what the Atreides home looks like. It's like Seattle. I know what Arrakis looks like. It's like the Sahara Desert. And I know what Gigi Prime looks like now, and it looks like I can't compare it to anything in modern times. But like, I want to know what the other great houses are, and I think that's the strength of a movie like this, that you come away just wanting more. Like, I remember after part 1 ended, I was like, give me part 2 now. Like, I need it right now. And I'd wait 2.5 years, and it was totally worth the wait. Like, I came out of it and I was like, that's everything that I wanted it to be. It was the experience I wanted. It reminded me of, like, I think it's so interesting, because we were just talking about Game of Thrones before this, why we're attracted to these stories specifically, like these stories of legend and fantasy and sci-fi. And I think ultimately for me, at the end of the day, it just reminds me of, like, it makes me feel like a kid again. I'm like looking up at the screen in awe, and I see so many movies in the theater, and the only ones that ever make me feel like that usually are like dramas. And I'm like, reminds me of being an adult. Whereas with Dune, what makes it so powerful is I feel like a fucking kid again seeing Revenge of the Sith in the theater, where I'm like, they can do no wrong in my eyes. And now it's way too easy for a movie to do wrong in my eyes. I'm so critical when I go to a Marvel movie or a DC movie or something that's a blockbuster event. I'm like looking for the holes in it. And I looked for the holes in this. And I don't know if there are many. I think the only gripe that I had with it really was, I think my TV brain turned on a little bit, where I'm like, how did FAIRWTHR find the Siege Temple so quickly when his brother couldn't? But it's like, I look past it because I'm like, all right, it's just moving the story forward. Like, let's just go. And it's a credit to Villeneuve. It's a credit to the cast. It's also a credit to all the people below the line that are working on this. Like, I stayed for the credits today, and a lot of the names that you're seeing, they're not American names. Like, they're people that are like in Abu Dhabi. Like, they have like the same names as Stilgar. And this is such a multicultural movie. I think that's why it's going to be so universally beloved, because it touches every single niche of the world. Like, obviously there's a white savior in Timothée Chalamet, but like, I mean, everybody else in this movie is not white except for Brolin and Butler.
Well, I think the original purpose of the novel was basically, so obviously Paul's got his, religious headstone kind of direction that's clearly going. I think the point of the original story was to kind of, it's inspired by the Middle East, is all I can say. And the Middle East is stronger than anything, anything or are aware of. It's desert power, it's hidden power to a lot of degrees. You as an imperialist might come in and think that you can tame it or control it or organize it, but it's their power at the end of the day. And I think, as we'll see in the next movie, and if more are made than that, we'll see in the next movie that Paul Atreides' character is fallible and maybe worthy of judgment. But that being said, even reading the books, you're like still rooting for this shit. You're like, damn it, man! Like,
is he going to go from an hero to an anti-hero?
Golden path, fucking keep all your people alive and make sure humanity.
I mean, it would keep on flashing to it when he was having those dreams. He's like, I just see everyone, just so many dead bodies.
Yeah.
And like, what do we know of his dreams? I mean, they're not always 100% true, but they're pretty accurate. I mean, he said it himself.
The very first movie, and that's what another thing I love about Dune, is that Villeneuve has done this thing where the movie opens and it's a black screen and it's that deep like baritone voice, and the first message was dreams are messages from the deep, and then the second one was power over spices, power over all, and then the Warner Brother logos come, and it's like, all right, and now we're going into the world. But I also wanted to say, all right, so Martian and I talked about this a little bit. This is a little bit bigger picture, but those other stories that are out there, would you guys watch, and would you guys be, because he wasn't, but I'm curious what your guys' stance on this would be. If HBO Max, they've already announced that they're doing a Bene Gesserit series. Is this something that like you guys are inspired by, or you're like, okay, now they're trying to Marvelify this thing where like they're introducing TV shows into it and all that kind of stuff? Like, because as a movie person, I want it to just be movies. If there's Bene Gesserit show, Rebecca Ferguson better be in it, and it better be like a prequel from like 100 years ago or something like that versus like right now.
They're trying to monetize it. They're trying to make as much and squeeze as much money. I mean, that's just the world we live in today. Everyone's looking for a dollar, but I feel like it's going to kind of dilute the excitements of this series. So who knows? It might be really, really good. I mean, like House of the Dragon's not really the best comparison, but I don't know. What's your guys' take?
I hate it. This story, like, obviously it depends kind of what route they decide to take with the Bene Gesserit, but like I don't think we need for the source material and what's out there, at least currently in the Dune Villeneuve universe. There's plenty of information on how we got here. I don't think you need a whole like walkthrough of how the Bene Gesserit came to power and started concocting their methods and all this. You know, I understand people watch it. I'll watch it, I'm sure. If it comes out, but like you said, PD, I think you said it great. It's just a dilution of the product.
Well, I don't know if Villeneuve would actually be behind it because he is so cinema forward. He's like, you need to see this in a theater. Like this is a movie theater experience. Like
I
feel like he almost has to be though.
Every last dollar out of the story, and that's the thing. Like I'm like, you know, like we talked about at the beginning of the pod. I read these books. I love these books. That source material is not there. I don't love it just being invented.
Well, and it becomes homework to an extent. Like, I want to go see the new Deadpool movie, and there's something about the TVA in there. So what? I'm gonna have to rewatch 2 seasons of Loki to remember what the TVA is. Like, it becomes homework to a point, and I don't want Dune to become homework. I want Dune to be Dune, and that's just, you know, it's. I think that's why it can be the Star Wars of our generation, like in the 70s and 80s, because, you know, this is an event that I'm going to go there on opening night every single time. And it's one spearhead in Villeneuve who I trust with my life because he hasn't made a bad movie yet. He's also, I think this is even a conversation we can have. You know, Oppenheimer just came out last year. I think it's Christopher Nolan's best work. I think Dune Part 2 might be Villeneuve's best work. I haven't done the homework yet and see if I like it more.
Easily is. Not even a question. It's his best work by far.
But for both of them, it feels like every single movie that they've made has been leading up to this point, and now it's those two. Like, I've been wondering, like, who's going to replace Spielberg, like the guy who made Jurassic Park, and like I can't imagine what it would have been like in the 90s to go to a movie and see a T-Rex for the first time, right? Or going to see Jaws and seeing a shark like that for the first time. And now it seems like it's going to be these two. The rumor is that Villeneuve is working on like 2 or 3 different things before Dune Part 3, whether it's Dune Messiah or whatever it might be. Does that, like, I mean, as a fan of movies and as a fan of Dune, those two things, is that troubling for you? Because once I left that theater today, I'm like, God damn it, just give me Part 3 immediately. Like, I know he can work on other things and I'm happy for him too, and I'll go see those opening night too, but like, would you guys rather have those 2 things, or do you want him to take his time with Part 3, even if it means we don't get it until 2029?
I'd rather him go straight in. Personally, I'd rather him run it straight back. Obviously, I understand like scheduling, planning, all that, getting actors ready and available to shoot these scenes and all that. I get that. My biggest concern with like a 5-year gap would be kind of the age and how actors and everybody changes. You know, he might change as a director. Florence Pugh, Austin Butler's dead, but Timothy Chalamet, you know, like all these actors change over the course of that time.
How much is Timmy going to age though in 5 years? Like, he might just be like permanently looking like this. He might be the Beyonce of this generation, where like he looks the same at 60.
my concern is he would change as an actor, and same with like Zendaya. Like obviously they could all become better, and they most likely will. Like don't get me wrong, I'm not. Most likely they'll be better, but like in the context of the story that's being told and and where we left off from movie 2 to movie 3, like I feel like if you ran movies 1, 2, and then 3 back to back to back, you might notice like a large jump in these kind of nuances of acting that they all have now 5 years removed from.
Yeah, Christopher Walken might be dead in 5 years too, so we need to cash out on Christopher Walken while he's still here.
He's out. He's not even relevant anyways. It's really Timmy, Zendaya,
Pew, Anya.
Pew, and that's really the 3 that matter. Momoa, and Lady Jessica. That's basically anybody who's relevant in the next set of story, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they mentioned the Emperor all of Dune 1. I was kind of just confused of like the hierarchy because like the Bene Gesserits are always running everything in the background and everyone's putting the Emperor on this high ass pedestal. And then once everyone realizes Timmy's the Messiah, like that end scene, like Timmy kind of just pulled up and was like, "Yo, what's up, bitch ass Emperor? Like, fuck you!" Like, and I was kind of like, "What is the hierarchy?" Because then Stellan was like, "Oh, we're gonna kill the Emperor." Like, I don't know, like they were hyping him up to like be this insanely high up guy, and then like it was kind of like, I don't know, like he's not that cool, he's not that badass. Like, I didn't really understand that. Like, I don't know.
So he's high up. The reason Stellan and the Harkonnens were making a power play is because they knew that the Emperor committed essentially treason against Atreides' family, so they had that in their back pocket. That was a power play on their end. The fact of the matter is, like, up until the point of like fighting against the Fremen, the Sardaukar, the Emperor's army, are the unmatched top fighters of the galaxy.
They're the 2017 Warriors.
And we see it briefly in movie 1. Jason Momoa's character Duncan Idaho goes, I fought Sardaukar before, and I fought the Fremen, and I've never been closer to death. Like,
Fremen.
Like a flash, and that's same with Duke Leto. I can't remember his actor's name, but
Oscar Isaac.
He wants to cultivate desert power because these people are they've lived through the harshest conditions. They're the strongest people. And so when it comes to that, like that needle point, that ball point there at the end, the Emperor knows he's outmatched.
Yep. And they're on Arrakis. Like it's like going into a Big 12 game at Allen Fieldhouse or at Hilton, and it's like they have home court advantage. Literally, like they have their worms that they can use. They have the 92 atoms. Yes, they have everything that they need, and they also have the threat that he has, like that keeps the great houses away at the very end, where he's like, if they try to attack us, I'll just blow up all the spice, and nobody will have spice anymore, so everybody can just fucking suck it. Like he's like, I can do that if I need to. So like they have that home court advantage, which I think is awesome. But like to the point about the hierarchy, I think that might have been where I struggled with Walken actually, because you're right, P. Like they did advertise him as like
untouchable.
This is the big bad, right? And I had the same issue with the newest Star Wars. Help me out, Berg. Is it Snoke? What his name is? Like
Snoke. I don't know those ones that well, but it's Snoke.
Snoke. Like I thought he was gonna be like this ultimate big bad, and you only see him for like 6 minutes, and then he gets fucking killed like right away.
Well, there was a whole point about that. I think in the movies is he was just a puppet for Emperor Palpatine's return, which was, I mean, to your point, it was a stupid plot point. It was stupid how they handled it. Didn't work, but that was what the point was supposed to be.
But we also know that
FAIRWTHR he's not really the big bad guy.
Was going to be the big bad, and he's big and bad in this for the time that he's in it. But like, I'm curious what the next big bad is going to be, because so far it's just been House Harkonnen, and House Harkonnen is not totally eliminated. I imagine. I bet there's Leia Seydoux' daughter that'll come and stuff like that. But Aaron, could you give us an idea of what the next big bad looks like? Is it just the other great houses that we don't know about yet, or is there somebody in existence right now that is like they will be that?
No, so the next big bad is basically those that understand and believe that the Bene Gesserit planted this idea centuries and centuries ago.
Like Zendaya.
Their supposed Messiah. And that's actually what you just said with Zendaya. Like that's my biggest issue with this movie. The whole kind of I'm mad at
Romance.
you.
Yeah.
I'm mad at you for this because like the movie does a decent job of trying to illustrate that Paul's saying like I only love you. Anything I do from like this is all political. And it'll work out. Like obviously the characters are going to be fine, but in the books it's like well understood that like this is a political play so that Paul's emperorship is not questioned. Zendaya knows that, or Chani's character knows that, she, in the same way that Lady Jessica is Duke Leto's concubine, like they never were married. Chani's character will be Paul's concubine, but he'll be married to Princess Irulan to ensure that there's no, because basically Christopher Walken's character, the Emperor, has no reason really to fight back. He knows he's lost, but he's like, my line is secured, the Emperorship. We're still alive, still in this. No reason to try to usurp or anything like that.
How does one like get put into emperorship, and is that the ultimate goal? I mean, because all Dune 1, like Harkonnens and Atreides, I mean, they were just fucking killing each other when the Emperor committed treason. Why didn't they just try and overthrow him? I mean, is it like Game of Thrones? Like everyone just wants to sit on the throne, or Lord of the Rings? Like everyone just wants the ring. Like like is it
really?
like that, or like how does that look and feel?
So the thing that's kind of undersold in the first movie is the galactic favor that the Atreides family has been garnering prior to the Emperor deciding that you're going to Arrakis. And that's why they get sent to Arrakis ultimately, is to set them up for failure. Because that's the thing. The Emperor saw everything behind the scenes that was happening and how the other great houses really admire Leto Atreides and everything they're doing and would follow him, like Ned Stark. You could make that analogy. Like Ned Stark, a lot of people would follow this guy to the ends of Earth. The Emperor saw that and said, we are going to put you on the harshest planet, taking away your prime enemy from the most profitable, most rich planet in the galaxy, the only planet where space travel relies upon. Like you need spice to space travel.
Yeah.
We're gonna make you think like this is a promotion, but really we're just setting you up as
for
you
failure.
For failure. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to articulate it, because I think that was super. I don't know if it was overlooked in the first movie, but that's definitely something I feel like we haven't touched on, where the Emperor knew what he was doing, putting the Harkonnens and Atreides at war with each other, so they probably wouldn't, direct that effort at him. So he was kind of playing a game, I think, more behind the scenes than using force.
Yeah, and he attacked so early too. While they're on Arrakis, it's after like a couple of weeks, so they don't have the opportunity to win over the Fremen, which the Harkonnen didn't even make an attempt to. They just wanted to, derail that entire world so they could use it for their benefit and handle the spice. And then they appointed Atreides to it. And I think that he knew, like if I leave them on there for too long, like they're going to win over the Fremen and they're going to try to overthrow me. And I'm not sure if Oscar Isaac, if Leto would have done that. You think so?
He was ready.
I think so.
For it. So he's definitely cognizant of the fact that this is a setup, and so I think in the story, in the book, and in the movie, I think he indicates that he goes, I thought I had more time, basically.
Right.
I needed a month more, kind of thing, and I would have garnered a little bit of power here. Yeah,
because he says to Lady Jessica, he's like, I should have married you. And like that's kind of not him like admitting defeat necessarily, but he's like, all right, we're about to go to war, kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay, did we get everybody's favorite performance and everybody's favorite scene?
Not favorite scene.
What's your favorite scene, P?
I thought this was gonna be everyone's favorite scene, but it was Paul's final test in the desert when he throws the thumper down and you see the huge worm come in, and they're like, oh my god, we told you to call a worm, but not that big of a fucking worm. And then he gets on it, dude. I had insane chills, dude. I thought that was the best scene, like by far. Yeah, he's falling, and then he's like struggling for like 5 minutes, and it's just so loud, and he's like, and like I think he was like latching it. It almost looked like the worm's nose, but like the little latch, and he finally got over it. And then like that's when everyone that right there was the realization that he was the Messiah. And then they go back, and then they go back, and then you see like the mural of like him like literally like written out like just like the Bible. I thought that was the best scene. I thought that was the best scene by far. Like I was like,
before they go back to that, like the actual like mural, that's when they go into like their little tent, and then he gets the name, and then everybody comes up and hugs him and is like welcoming as a Fremen. Usul, no, that was brilliant, and that's another one of those examples where if that scene looks cheesy at all, like the sandworm, him writing it, the entire movie, it doesn't not work, but it doesn't work half as well. Because I mean, they've been marketing the sandworm like it's fucking crazy. Like the popcorn bucket, even like they just.
Yeah, did any of you guys get that popcorn bucket?
It's a dead one.
I got 3. No,
did you get it? Sorry about that.
One to come in, one to piss in, one to shit in. I have a few of them. But all right, I'm glad you mentioned that one, Pete, because the actual writing of the worms, it's like, that is pretty monumental, and that's
another picking it. How the fuck did they get Lady Jessica on it and her little buggy on the goddamn sandworm?
I was curious about that.
I was wondering that the whole time. How the fuck did those things stop? How was everything getting on those?
That's what I'm saying.
It's like a bus. They park it.
I'm not sure.
I have no idea. I was thinking the same thing.
There's no way they're all just jumping on there.
Absolutely.
They had the elderly on there. They had elderly people on
Josh Brolin was on it. Like he's just like riding that thing, and
you'd have to think that they'll have like another hill pass where they set up their tent, and then whoever hooks the worm like rides it up, and then they've got like a hooker for the tent.
They're dragging like 40 people.
Yeah.
Because she's having a conversation with Timmy about like, I'm going south, you need to come with me, and your sister is saying the same thing, and then down like the hill somebody yells at her like, Lady Jessica, your thingy is ready, and it's like a little buggy for her to get in, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, how are they gonna get that motherfucker on there? Like, she's pregnant, like deep in pregnancy.
That's a real.
And then cut next scene. She's just chilling on there.
Just
like,
shaking.
No problem, no scrapes.
Well, she's like 6 months pregnant.
Yeah, that baby is not coming out looking like Anya Taylor-Joy. I can tell you that much. That baby is coming out looking a whole lot worse than that. All right. Is there anything else that we missed? Ehren, did you have a performance you want to touch on?
No, I had a favorite scene I wanted to touch on. Okay. I think you guys all touched on scenes that I loved, but I thought strictly, I got 2 scenes that I'm thinking of. Both are on Gidi Prime and on the Harkonnen planet. First one is specifically when FAIRWTHR is in the arena, but when the like Guardians are surrounding. I fucking that just whole shot, that little sequence, I thought was incredible. Those guys are fucking weird. I love how he, fought them off. He's like, "How dare you interfere with this test of comp?"
And they didn't have knives or swords; they had hooks. They had like little, which is so weird. And they were like wearing like that crazy headset that like Playboy Cardi's definitely gonna have at one of these Kanye concerts here soon when they're like doing vultures. And it's just like, damn, dude, like they thought of everything.
It looked like the devil, and this is the end, like the big fucking devil thing. And this is the end. That's what
the moment, Ehren, where he turns off his shield, and then Baron Harkonnen stands up, and he's like, "Show me who you are," and it's like, "Fuck yeah, let's fucking go." And you kind of root for him a little bit in that moment.
Oh yeah,
I was rooting for him.
It's in there where they're, you got Baron Harkonnen sitting up there like, oh. That guy's not drugged. Like, stop the fight. He's like, no, let's see what he's made of. And
don't ruin my nephew's birthday.
The shield is that it's not blue like on Arrakis. Like, just the subtle details there. It's a black shield and it flickers off. I thought that was fucking electric.
Badass.
But then my second favorite scene, I got to call them both out. My second favorite scene was when FAIRWTHR is being seduced. In that massive fucking hall. I just thought the scale and the grandness of that shot, like it's
with the fireworks on the outside.
Yeah, and they're flashing sideways like parallel lights every 3,000 feet, judged off the scale of this building, and he's just walking through, and and then it flashes to him and you see a figure in the background. I just thought those were awesome fucking shots. And
it has the Bene Gesserit trippiness to it too, where like he doesn't know how far he's going and where he is, and he just ends up in the guest wing. He's like, I've never been here before. She's like, well, come to my room. And like, dude, all right, if you guys had like the opportunity to like, I would put my hand in that box so fucking quick for Lea Seydoux, dude. Like, it's not even funny. She's so fucking fine. If you guys haven't seen her in the more recent James Bond movies, she is smoking. I think she might show nip in one of them, but she's smoking hot in all of those. And that was just another thing. Didn't remember that Lea Seydoux was going to be in this movie, and then she shows up, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, they have everybody in this bitch. Like, I mean, the next thing I know, like Leo's going to show up in part 3, and it's just going to be like, God damn it! Like, it's Paul Atreides. He's going to be dating Lady Jessica as Paul Atreides' stepdad. Like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? I do want to say one last thing about and under the line, or he's technically above the line, but Hans Zimmer, the composer of this is just another thing in his bag where he is becoming probably like the heir to John Williams as the best score producer. I think Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross probably have an argument for that, but he's able to make these songs that like you feel like you've heard your entire life. And Ehren, you mentioned like the chanting, like the like that's just so perfect for this fucking movie. And then there's another score that Pete, when you see it the second time, they usually play it during like the romantic scenes between Zendaya and Timmy, but then you'll start to hear it in other scenes as well that are just a little bit more crucial, and it's like got a different inflection and tone to it. And his ability to like mix like this like very like bright, like hopeful just sound with something that's also like intrinsically dark and depressing is just, he's the man.
I was watching Dune 1 right before Dune 2, and I had the subtitles on, and the way they described the music was deep, ethereal music, and I just thought that was so true. Like, it's so ethereal.
Ehren,
So
you might want to look into it, but I'm pretty sure that he invented new instruments for part 1. Like, I'm pretty sure he literally invented new instruments, so that might be something you might want to do a nerd corner on.
And I don't know how common this is amongst composers that are doing these for movies, but I'm pretty sure it's Hans Zimmer. If not, it's John Williams. But either way, it's a cool tidbit that he talks to the director when he's trying to compose the music for the scene, and just says, like, don't tell me what it's about. Like, I don't want to know those details. Describe the emotions that are being portrayed, and then I will give it to you. And it blows my mind that you can get those little details where I'm sure they go into depth on the emotions, but you can get those little details and then just turn around and create the masterpiece that we watch.
That's the masterpiece like idea of creation though, because in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Jason Segel's character does the music for like a Law & Order SVU show, and he just sits in the screening room and just fucks around on the piano while he's watching it. And Hans Zimmer's like, no, I do not want to see a single frame. Just tell me the emotions that are in it. And it's like, okay, dude, like, fuck you. Ludwig van Göransson is really good too, and Johnny Greenwood. So those are some of my favorite composers. All right, is there anything on Dune Part 2 that we haven't covered that we need to cover? Should we talk spice?
No, I just want to say one thing. Florence Pugh, she was amazing in this movie.
So
She's
hot.
just beautiful and so good, but her outfits are so funny. I could not stop thinking how she looked just like Tizo Touchdown. If you don't know who Tizo Touchdown is,
everybody who listens to this pod should know who Tizo is, because they should have heard Bird talk about it before.
I could not stop thinking that she just looked like Tizo Touchdown. I couldn't get out of my fucking head, dude.
And she's a podcaster. She's a real life Potter up in Arrakis. Like, she's keeping the medium alive up there, which is pretty tight. Like, she's documenting everything. Ehren, you mentioned that earlier. Like, the book, like, it has her perspective, right? Like, that's kind of like each story starts with like a preface with her.
Yep. So she's kind of like not a narrator, but
what's her name again? Princess Aurelius?
Arulin. Yeah, so most, like, I can't, there's a ton of chapters. Basically, she, throughout Paul Atreides' life, keeps a diary. And so as Dune 1 is going on, there'll be these little, like, preface segments, like, from the diary of Princess Aurelian circa this year, you know, the God Emperor, blah, 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 always saw XYZ. Kind of stuff. So, like, you don't really know what that is relevant to until you get to the end of the book and you realize that him and Arulin are getting married, and kind of understand they end up together, and so she gets a kind of firsthand account on his life. But she's also been a Jesuit, and so like these are accounts. These are accounts for the order, but they offer you insight into like kind of Paul's psyche, Paul's why he's doing what he's doing, and kind of some of the like inner political aspects of what goes on.
And again, we open on her, so she's going to be crucial going forward. She was kind of an exposition tool for a lot of the movie, but Tizo touchdown point is ridiculous because like I was thinking like Kanye on the Yeezus tour, like with a mask and stuff like that.
There was one outfit, and I have it pulled up right now. It's like she has like this like chain metal silver thing, and then like a face mask and like dangly things. But on the Bene Gesserit point, I did wish we saw more of the voice in this movie, like that scene in Dune 1 where Paul and Lady Jessica are being stolen, and that's my favorite scene. And I think all the Dunes where she's like, kill your partner, give me the knife, and then she slits his throat. I wanted more voice. I really did. I was sitting there thinking like, because the voice is the most badass thing out of all this. Besides, it's the Force. Besides, it's FAIRWTHR and the voice. I just wanted more voice. I'm sure you guys wanted more voice.
Is that an example of less is more? Is it like the time we spent with the Harkonnens, where it's like every time that they use it, it's just a tasty treat? Because the silence at the end that he drops on the Reverend Mother, like I can't say it enough. That is the most electric that I felt in the theater. So it's like that's the Oppenheimer bomb for me. I was like, holy fucking shit. Like,
agreed.
Just like everybody's reaction. And then they have like a very quick glimpse of Austin Butler, and he's like kind of turned on by it. He's like, he just dropped it on her. That's pretty sick. I wish I could do that.
Well, I think FAIRWTHR can. Like, that's like why he's. Is
he a Bene Gesserit too?
He passed the Gom Jobber. He's the second male ever to pass the test. Like that, he passed in the first. He's basically counterpart to Paul. He's a controllable counterpart.
And the Gom Jabbar is the box, just so
it's the test. Okay. It's the first test that no man has ever passed, and the second one is the water of life that Paul drinks. He obviously passes them both, but
so if
the voice is OP. I think if Paul and Jessica are using that on a regular basis, like they wouldn't Fremen faith.
I feel like it's like an unwritten rule in fighting. I'm sure it is probably in the book. Like you can't use the voice if you're fighting hand-to-hand combat. No way, right?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, the same thing. I was like, why is he just use it on him?
Even when he fought the Fremen in the last sequence of Dune 1, like he didn't use the voice where he easily could. I bet you a lot of people don't. I bet you he doesn't want a lot of people knowing that he's been a Jesuit. That's probably it. I don't know. I just wish we had more voice.
I do too. It is really fucking cool.
Agreed, though.
Can't wait for Dune Part 3. I'm sure we'll talk about it 5 years from now. Hopefully we'll have a lot more money from this pod by then. Hopefully we'll have our own studio. Hopefully we'll have our own spice. I would like for somebody to commoditize spice. If somebody could make a drug that is like spice, that would be awesome. Maybe it's just like microdosing acid. I'm not sure. But yeah, I like for spice to become a real thing in America. Petey, Ehren, Riesberg, thank you guys for joining. We appreciate it. If you're still listening to this, then tomorrow, Box Out Boys will be dropping. Ehren and Riesberg did a great job talking college hoops. I showed out for a little bit with them. And then we should have Rent Money this week talking golf. And we'll be back with Riesberg, Turner, and Cerrone later this week too. So thank you guys for listening.
One last question. Sorry to cut you off, Viv. How many times have you guys seen this in theaters?
At least
once for now. Oh, yeah. I got to go one more time. I think I might go on Tuesday, 3/5, March 5th.
Okay. Everyone's hitting it twice. Vivi, you going for a third?
I think I might go see it again with Dad this weekend.
You're going for a third?
Ehren saw it back-to-back nights. He saw it Thursday and Friday night. Actually, let's do that before we leave. So my second time seeing it today, I was a little bit more like cognizant of the crowd around me just because I wanted to see how people were responding to it. During the sand writing scene, there was a chick in front of me. She's like not even a chick. She's like a 55-year-old woman with her husband. And when Paul was writing the sandworm, she went like this, hands in the air, just fucking like shredded. Like sick. She was so fired up. And Ehren, I want you to tell your theater experience too, because you might have partaken in a little bit of Mary before.
I got one too after Ehren.
Yeah. So on Friday night, Erica and I went and saw it again. Took a little edible in the first like 15 minutes of the movie. We're sitting there, you know, an hour goes by. I'm starting to get real chiefed. And then I'm sitting there, a quiet scene hits. I think it's like maybe right before we go to Gi Prime with the Harkonnens. I'm sitting there and I hear this noise in the theater. And I'm like, hey, is that in the theater right now? And Erica's like, what are you talking about? You hear that? And then it gets loud. It gets loud. I'm like, okay, that was a part of the movie. That was a part of the movie. That was a part of the movie. Cool. And then, you know, another minute and a half goes by and it gets quiet again. I'm like, okay, that's definitely in the theater. And she's like, yeah, I hear it too now. And then like 5 seconds after that, this dude right next to us yells at his date. These are like 55-year-olds. Like this, they're going on a date for the first time because I was watching him walk in. They're on a date for the first time. He goes, no, that is definitely in the movie. What is that? She pulls out her phone, and it's a lightsaber app. Actively going, you know, like, and me and Erica are just geeking. We're just sitting there like, oh my God. And everybody right next to us are looking over like, what the fuck? 20 minutes later, she gets a phone call in the middle of the movie, and she has her settings to flash the back light.
Oh God.
And so that went for 10 seconds to it. And so like being as high as I was, just fully paranoid. I haven't been in a public setting like that baked and off like a 30 milligram edible. And this lady is just tweaking me out.
Just secondhand embarrassment to the fucking next level. That's brutal.
Yeah. I was like, I got to whisper extra quiet now.
And Pete, what was your experience like?
Mine wasn't near as fucked as that. I mean, that was ridiculous. But mine was just like
should have gotten kicked out. What the
yeah.
It was ridiculous.
I love the lightsaber app. Like that's the last thing that she had pulled up. She probably thought she was seeing another space opera. She was
the best part is he tried to like play it off. Like he clearly had asked her already, like, hey, is something making noise over there? She's like, no.
Yeah.
What the fuck was playing in her purse?
Mm-hmm.
Mine was like Megan and I were just sitting and we were at Jordan Creek and like there was like Jordan Creek now it's like you sit down and like there's seats in front of you but you can't see because there's like a wall there and it's so we were just the movie was getting ready to go and we saw like 3 nerds come in and sit in front of us and they were all decked out and as soon as the lights went down and like the Dune came on they were all just like this. I was just like, these guys are fucking not fucking around, dude. Here we go. I just had never seen anyone do that. And you couldn't even see the chairs. You just saw 3 arms stick up. And they were just like all 3 of them simultaneously.
That's crazy.
Like,
you didn't come up and say hi to me, Davis, and Dickies after that? That was us.
It was nuts, dude. It was nuts. It was
no, this movie has some serious fandom, man. Like there's definitely a cult around it. So that's great because I mean, $180 million at the box office opening weekend is no joke. Like that's Barbie and Oppenheimer numbers right there. So it's a movie event of the year. It'll be hard for anything to live up to this. We can have a deeper conversation about it sometime, like in like December, about like top 10 movies, all that kind of stuff. But I'll be curious where it sees this play in the Oscar race. I wonder, like, because it was supposed to come out originally in November of last year, and then it got pushed back because of the SAG-AFTRA strike. So all the actors were on strike, and they did such a good job of promoting this movie. And I was like pissed when they announced that it was delayed. Because I was like, fuck, man. But then it made sense because it's like you have the biggest celebrities in the world. Like they probably have a combined like 2.5 billion Instagram followers. They can't promote it while they're on strike. So like it worked out in their favor and strategically it was a really good move. So I'm really excited for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, they broke even week 1, right?
Yeah.
Just about.
Oh, shit. I mean, that's fucking nuts. I haven't even thought about it like that.
Ant-Man, by the way, Ant-Man, $275 million budget.
Insane.
The movie was awful. It was one of the
bad.
worst Marvel movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like the one too. Like that was the one that they were counting on to like bring him back.
So sad.
That is.
That they
and then you have
watched
a movie
that
like
and said
Dune that
he's
comes
gonna be
out.
the one.
They're money laundering. Convince me otherwise. Disney is just money laundering through these garbage fucking Marvel movies. There's no
Bob Iger, just a sex addict.
Bad.
Okay. Save it for the pod.
Bob Iger's a sex addict.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We love you. We will see you on the other side. Peace out.